This is the EricSwahnRacing.com podcast. I like to just jump right into it.
Cool.
It's not live, so anything can be edited out if you wish afterwards. And so my quick pep talk is like, just be yourself, swear, have an unpopular opinion or popular, talk about whatever you want. We can touch on your energy drink. That's one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on here. It's because, I like to talk to motorcycle racers, people in the industry, but also people who run businesses, friends and family. Like, the stage is yours. Don't feel like you're talking too much or rambling. That's the whole point, is to dive deep into some of these things. So the biggest thing is it's not an interview style. It's a podcast conversation. So just try not to answer with like one word answers, and it flows pretty good.
Cool. Yeah, man.
So
I think I'll be good with that.
Yeah.
As long as we find topics that we both kind of know about, I think we'll be good.
For sure. So it's EricSwahnRacing.com podcast. I think number 122 now with Jack Limongelli. Did I say that right?
Perfect.
All right. So you're over in New York now?
Yeah, I live in Brooklyn. Grew up in New Jersey. Went to school in New York. So kind of been in this area my whole life.
All right. I think I've only been to New York just for a connecting flight and then didn't leave the airport.
Yeah, I mean, the airports here kind of suck. They've actually they've really improved in the last 10 years, but still, it's not a good representation of the city.
Sure, I get that. And so you have an energy drink company called Good to Go Energy. And tell me a little bit about that. How did it get started? Where are you at now? How long you been doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I started it with my best friend. He's in the Marine Corps. I'm the National Guard, right? It's part of the Army. And we both left for our initial training pretty much at the exact same time. And when you're there, you don't get any caffeine. You spend time in the field. And we kind of both came to the same conclusion that it'd be really great to have a way to bring caffeine into the field. When you're out there, you could be out there for 2 days, you could be out there for 2 weeks. And most of the time, you only have what you can carry, right? So if you have a rucksack, you can't really fit an energy drink in there. Now you might be able to fit one, right? So if you're going out for a hike for 2 hours, who cares? Yeah, right. But if you are going for 14 days, right, you can't fit 14 energy drinks, right? They take up too much space. They're heavy, and God forbid one of those explodes, it's a disaster, right? So what we came up with is the idea to put it in essentially like a large crystal light, right? So it's powder. I don't ever pretend that this is a revolutionary idea. There's other products like this. I think what's cool though is that none of them are specifically marketed at the military. So it's a little bit of buy us for us approach, right? We feel like we really understand our market. And like I said, all the packaging, it's traditional army green, very simple, subdued. We've got 2 flavors right now. We've got Italian ice, which is kind of like a light citrus. I always compare it to the old little cupped Italian ices that you get at like a town pool when you're 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And then just a standard blue raspberry.
Okay.
No, what's actually really interesting is if you mix the two, you get a third flavor that tastes like a rocket pop.
There you go.
It's almost like we created another flavor without having to do any work.
Nice. And so you just mix it in water, 8 ounces or 16 ounces of water?
Yeah, I think we have written on here mixed with 12 ounces of water. But it's one of the cool things is you can kind of control how strong the flavor is, right? So if you mix it with 12 and you're like, wow, this is way too sweet for me, just use 16. Or if you're like, man, I just, I'm a sugar addict, I need that punch of sweetness, use less water.
Sure. And is it sugary? Is it sugar free? Do you use sweeteners? What about the sugar side of it?
Yeah, so we definitely, one thing to be very clear on is we don't pretend like it's healthy, right? It is an energy drink. There is 0 sugar, right? There are artificial sweeteners. So it's 0 calories, which I think is something a lot of people care about when they're picking an energy drink. But there's some energy drink that Live Fit is all over their packaging. They have pictures of real fruits and stuff like that. We are not trying to trick our audience. And like I said, we feel like we know our audience.
Yeah.
Being in the military, guys who care more about their caffeine content rather than the health of it. So is it going to kill you? Absolutely not. Is it going to harm your health? Absolutely not. Is it going to improve your health? No. But
Yeah.
like,
It's
neither does
honest.
coffee. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right. And then what about the caffeine content? Is it pretty high or is it kind of middle road?
So that's another thing that we kind of took a different approach to what most drinks are doing right now. If you look at Bangs, there's 300 milligrams of caffeine. Like that's
It's
absurd. It's
excessive.
like
Yeah.
right. It's 4 or 5 cups of coffee. Like you just don't need that. So ours is 100, 75 of which is a standard caffeine, like fast acting. It's just standard. Like you consume it, it gives you that jolt. The other 25 milligrams is a delayed release. It's just bonded to some kind of acid that takes your stomach longer to digest.
Hmm.
So it slowly hits you over like 30 to 40 minutes. So one of the cool things is that it kind of it smooths out the crash of caffeine. But we also like that because it's only 100 milligrams. Like you can drink two at once. You can make one and sip on it throughout the day and make another one. You can't drink two Bangs back to back, right? Your
Right.
stomach's just going to be churning. So, and also like I guess a little side thing about the caffeine content. One of the big concerns that a lot of command structures in the military have with energy drinks is their connection to heat casualties, right? People heat catting because they are dehydrated. While I think there's a lot of like conflicting evidence with caffeine's effect on your hydration, because you have to mix our drink with 12 ounces of water, you're always consuming more liquid than you would with the same amount of caffeine in an energy drink, right? So like a Bang is like 16 ounces for 300 milligrams of caffeine. If you want to consume 300 milligrams of our caffeine, you got to consume 36 ounces of water,
Okay. That makes sense.
right? So you're always while the drink doesn't hydrate you, it forces you to use enough water that you aren't dehydrating yourself.
Yeah, I got you. So, how'd you make the decision to go with like a powder versus like maybe a mint or something like that? Because I've been a while back, maybe a year or two ago, I bought a whole pack of like energy mints, and I'm still working on those. They're maybe 55 milligrams a piece, but
Yeah.
just a different way to consume it.
Yeah, I think it's there's really like there's two reasons, right? Number one is practicality. If you're talking about a mint, I guess anytime you produce a product like this, there's a few options, right? You can like buy all the machinery and you can mix it all yourself. That takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of expertise that we didn't have in the drink and really like consumables industry in general. There's these things called co-packers, where you basically go to them, you say, "Here's my exact specifications for my product. Um, I need you guys to use your expertise and your equipment to source the ingredients and to package it for me." There's a lot of companies that would do that for liquids and powders, right? So it was a lot easier to go down that route. So that's kind of the first answer, and then the second answer is that you're thinking about our target audience again. Those guys going out to the field, they're very used to products that look just like this, that are um, hydration salts, right? So those things have all kinds of electrolytes, sodium, potassium, things like that. So we were kind of just trying to redirect a behavior that already exists for our target audience into our product.
Sure, there's probably way more people who drink energy drinks than have caffeine mints, right?
Yeah, and you see those things all the time, like the caffeine gums, and at least anecdotally, like I don't see those in my friend group ever catching on. I try them too, just because like I feel like I should be up on the market, but
Yeah.
like they just never seem to stick around.
Sure. For me, it's like I'm just getting through the latest packs that I have purchased, rather
Yeah,
than buying something new.
yeah,
But I don't think
yeah.
I'll buy any more of them. One of the things I didn't like about it is one of their main ingredients uh, is it aspartame, which is like a laxative. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, why am
So
I taking a
yeah,
laxative? Like, I don't need a laxative.
yeah, we don't have any aspartame, and there are oh man, I'm trying to think. There are a lot of sugar replacements that do exactly what you're saying. They cause the muscles like around your colon to spasm and essentially act like a laxative.
Yeah.
But
Like
we
this
don't
is
have
not
those, which
ideal.
is great. Yeah.
And so what does it sell for? Where can you buy it? You got buy it in packs or singles?
So right now it's $1. Technically it's like $1.25, but we give service members a 20% discount. So our goal is always to sell to them for $1, right? We save a lot of money on shipping because again, it's such a lightweight product. Or we're not moving cans, so it doesn't take up a lot of space and it's not heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to pass that on to the consumer. Again, this is like a buy us for us product. We're not trying to like screw over our peers.
Yeah.
So we sell right now just on our website, goodtogooenergydrink.com. And again, because we're such a small operation, like we don't have intermediary packaging, right? Like you can just, if you order 10 of these, you're just getting 10 individually packaged. There's no box yet. Those are all plans for down the road, but like with just the two of us and not really knowing exactly what we're doing, it's, there's like a long list of ideas and that's on there, but we just haven't gotten to it.
And how long have you been doing this now for the energy drink company?
So the official like launch, I guess, was October or September, somewhere around there. We had the product in July
Of 21?
No, 22.
22. Okay.
And then the like initial idea for the product was December 2019. And then the real, like what I view as the start date was March. Oh, I'm sorry. It was December 2020. And then the real start in my mind is like March 2021.
I got
So,
you.
we're like a year and a half deep. And there were, could we have done it a lot faster if we knew what we were doing? Absolutely. There was a lot of learning along the way. But, one of the most beautiful things about this is that there's no outside money in it, right? There's no loans from banks. There's no investors. So there's nobody telling us to hurry up and sell. It's just us. And we are taking our time and trying to be as deliberate as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm sure it took a while for you to come up with the idea and the courage and the balls to actually launch it. So it's probably months or years in the making before that even took place.
Oh yeah. I mean, that first time I like, I've never spent money like this before. Like this is like that first time I hit, submit on like a large credit card payment. I was like, geez, this is
It's a lot.
this is the feeling I haven't felt before.
Yeah, it's good doing it with no investment or anything like that. Sometimes doing that can put you on the back foot, and now you owe all these investors tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you don't know if it's going to work out or not. So that could be stressful.
There's so many things that there's so many reasons I don't want people involved. And like you nailed it, right? Like you owe somebody money, and then even just little things like, did I set up my LLC correctly? Like as far as I can see, yes. I used whatever that website is everybody uses, LegalZoom.
Oh yeah.
But like if I've got investors who know a lot more about it and they're, scrutinizing it, it's just like another set of eyes are going to find issues. And like it's almost easier to keep things in house and not have people scrutinize all the little details.
Right. I hear that. And if you were hypothetically to go on like Shark Tank, what would they say about this?
Oh, dude, I've already got the whole script.
Oh yeah.
I just sat in my room one day. I don't know, maybe this was like 2 months ago. Had a few too many beers just by myself and was watching Shark Tank nonstop. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna write our script. I don't remember all of it right now, but it would involve me for sure walking in full face paint, full uniform, rucksack,
Camo.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. And give them a good pitch about like, hey, here's an energy drink in a can. Try to put this in my full rucksack right now. What's gonna happen when I ruck flop back and it just explodes everywhere, and then give them some of these and have them put them in there. But I have thought about what their like response would be. I think that their biggest concern would be competition because there is no intellectual property. It's literally just a brand that I would own. But at the same time, there is definitely, I don't think you can ever underestimate like the power of marketing to a community that you're a part of. I think a lot of people want to support you when you do that. So I think that would be the angle that we lean heavily to really any future investor, whether it's Shark Tank or like, just some venture capitalist.
Yeah, I mean, you're going up against some major players with Formula One budgets, and in the case of Red Bull and like
Yeah.
Monster Energy and all those, all the other ones, Rockstar and Bang, like you were saying. But there's always, I think, a place for other people, and like you're maybe filling a market need that hasn't been done yet. But they could say, well, what if Red Bull just comes out with a camo energy drink flavor, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's a challenge that I'm not sure we are like equipped to solve just yet. Which I think is kind of why there's almost like sometimes things are cool when they're not big, and right,
Yeah.
when they're still part of small little niche communities, and that's almost like the approach we're trying to take, where we want to be, the military is huge. There's so many jobs in the military. Not everybody goes out to the field. Not everybody would need this product. One of the things that'd be really cool is that if we are beloved by just that small community of infantrymen, in the Army and in the Marine Corps, who actually go out in the field and like do the dirty work, right? So that would be a way that I think we could differentiate ourselves and really focus on, even take that big military community and make it even smaller, and say, all right, Red Bull, if you want to come in, like, you might get all those other military folks, but we still have our small, tight knit community.
The original core group of people.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And so you said you had the website, and what's the website called?
It's goodtogooenergydrink.com.
And are you
And I think
on?
it's all spelled out, all words, no numbers, nothing like that.
All right. And are you on other social media? I think I found you from Instagram.
Yeah. So same thing, Good to Go Energy Drink. I always say that we are not a very well-run brand, so the Instagram is very much it's me posting things that I think my friends would find funny.
Yeah, that's all right.
You know what I mean?
So
Yeah.
you got the Instagram, Facebook. Are you on YouTube?
There's a YouTube account. We haven't posted anything to it yet. We just don't really have we don't have the content for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just locked down the name, to make sure that once we want to start pushing stuff out there, we can do that.
Sure. And Twitter, OnlyFans, anything like that?
It's funny. So definitely not Twitter. I was never a Twitter user. Neither was my friend who's doing this. So we honestly don't even know how to use it. But you mentioned OnlyFans, like the porn industry really aligns with our target audience. So like we have not gone down that road yet, but it's not to say it won't be in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I know athletes who have their own pages, so it's not only porn, but could be just people who are looking to build an audience in a different way.
Yeah, I honestly just don't even know much about the site. But you think about that, the core age group of males 18 to 35, like that's kind of the target audience.
Yeah.
Definitely those are maybe the biggest consumers of those sites. So.
And are you actually taking out any ads or doing advertising in any way, like paid or otherwise?
We're just literally this past week and into next week starting to meet with different marketing firms and different things like that to actually pay for it. There's the first one that we just secured it's called My Base Guide. So whenever when you're in the military, like you can be uprooted pretty quickly, right? Move from one base to another, all within the United States. So My Base Guide essentially helps you kind of like reestablish your life when you move from one to another. Like let's say you move from California to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. You got to find new doctors, right? You got to find like a new place to get your haircut, a new gym, maybe a new mechanic, right? Like all these things. And their website lets you just from a drop down select Fort Bragg, barbershop. So where we are in that is Fort Bragg, like gym and fitness, right? So if you do that combination, you'll see us on that.
Okay.
So that's our first paid advertising. Well, hopefully it works out, but yeah, it was at least a nice check the box to say that we're actually doing something more than just posting silly Instagram videos.
Yeah. And are there any aspirations to get your product in stores, brick and mortar, like 7-Eleven or like grocery stores, things like that?
So On military bases, there's these exchanges, they call it. It's literally just like a Walmart. It's like a Walmart plus military uniforms. Like that's the best way to describe it.
Okay.
We would love for that to be the only source for brick and mortar, or at least the first one. Um, but we almost need to establish ourselves more before going to them and saying, hey, we can tell you that the people who shop here want our product. You should put our product in your store.
Yeah, I hear that. You have to have some reputation and feedback and reviews before a bigger place is going to want to take you on, I would imagine.
Yeah, I honestly like don't even. I've thought a lot about it, but I don't know what that process really looks like. You know,
Yeah.
it's for sure a challenge, and I compared them to Walmart. They're obviously not as big as Walmart, but they are a massive chain, right? They're on every single base, so it's not as simple as just like talking to the owner and being like, "Hey, can you just toss this on your front counter and see if people want it?"
Yeah. And I hear that you have to pay for certain shelf space at different places. Like if you want the best possible thing, it's going to cost more
Yeah,
money to get that in the store than if it's on the bottom shelf in the back row 14, you know?
yeah. It's all these things. Like I don't have the answers because right, I've never done this before. One of the things we're actually thinking about is where does this sit, right? Because you kind of nailed it, right? If it sits on a shelf, the only people going to buy it are people who are going into the store for it, right? Nobody's going to go stumble across it and be like, oh, what is this? Let me take it. I think what would be really cool is building a little box similar to like the size of this, putting suction cups on the back and putting it on the inside door or the outside door of the like fridge section of energy drinks. Right. So
Okay.
somebody already going for a drink can say, oh, what is this? What is this brand new product? Let me just grab it. Let me try it along with whatever drink I was going to buy originally.
Because it doesn't need to be refrigerated, but having it right in front of those drinks might associate it with the same kind of thing.
Right. And I'm sure if we could do this, we would be violating some contract with the drinks who are in the fridge. But if you're on the door, right, you're basically using space that nobody's already using. So there could be some incentive for the store to utilize that space.
Yeah,
So
nobody's paying for
see what
it
happens.
now, so it could be
Right,
on the
exactly.
table or on the
Yeah.
door, so to speak.
Yeah, maybe it'll be like on the bottom of the door, like the very top, and maybe not like dead center, but anywhere would be cool.
Eye level, hand level.
That's what I would love. Yeah, but I don't know if we have that kind of money yet.
Yeah. And then if you say you got Target or whoever, Walmart, to say yes, okay, we'll do it. Do you have the capacity to pump out 400,000 packets right now?
No, definitely not. But it's the
But if
short
you
answer is
got
no.
if you got that order, then you could maybe go to a bank and say, "Hey, look, we have the order. Now we need the funding
100%. Yeah,
to get
you
it."
nailed it. Yeah,
Right?
you nailed it. It's truly like it's an order of operation thing, right? Where you've got to have one thing secured to then go back and get the funding. But like I was mentioning earlier, those co-packers, they can handle this kind of stuff very, very quickly. So that's one of the beautiful things about not having our own equipment producing it, right? You can go to these other people that have capacity and have the sizes for this, and they quite literally just need the list of ingredients, the amounts of each, and a check, and then they can go do it.
Yeah. So then they can scale up pretty quick, it sounds like.
Yeah, they definitely can. The co-packer we used this first time specializes in small business, and I think we were probably like the smallest that they would be willing to do. We made 100,000 units. Um, the only thing is that we sourced our own ingredients and then shipped it to them, which was a big mistake. It just took way too much time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if should we be in a position to need a lot of units very quickly, we would just go to a one-stop shop and let them literally do everything.
Yeah, because they could probably get even better prices than you might be able to with having established relationships already with other suppliers.
Yeah, 100%. And the whole, I've learned so much about the industries. Um, our combination of ingredients is very unique, and we are that is our intellectual property, right? Like nobody can copy that. We could sue anybody who copied it. Um, But the actual way you get to that combination of ingredients is by combining active ingredients like caffeine, beta alanine, taurine, things like that, sweeteners, and then flavors that you buy from flavor houses, right? So these flavor houses will just have like a generic blue raspberry or a generic light citrus. And then from combining those with your unique combination of sweeteners and other ingredients, you get to a unique flavor. So it's almost like other companies could have the same starting flavors and even the same ingredients, but use them in different amounts and produce a totally different flavor.
Yeah. So if somebody were to try to copy yours exactly, how would you even go about like knowing about it? If they're a similar size company as you have to like scour the market and find all these different, look at all the ingredient labels and everything.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's one of the difficult things, right? Because you don't need to, because these are not FDA like approved products, right? The whole supplement industry is not FDA approved. Because of that, you can put these products out by just, you list the active ingredients, again, caffeine, beta alanine, taurine, and then you say the rest is like I forget the exact term, but it's like a proprietary blend, right? So you don't need to reveal exactly what's in it. And even if you reveal what's in it, you don't have to reveal the amounts.
Okay. So it'd be kind of hard for them to exactly copy.
Yeah. But it's funny though. So we paid the way, like, I wasn't just mixing random fucking powders and, coming up with a flavor. We paid a company in Chicago to actually to come up with the formula, right? So I told them what we wanted, what the active ingredients we wanted were, what kind of the calorie content, like all these different parameters. And then they did all the blending, would send me, 3 samples that were kind of similar. I'd pick my favorite one. We'd use that as a base, 3 more, and they kind of like branched down this tree of flavors until we got one that we wanted. But the reason I bring that up is because the way we developed the white one, which is the Italian ice and my favorite, is we started by trying to replicate the white monster, because I think that is the best energy drink ever made.
Yeah.
So while we didn't copy or even replicate it perfectly, that was the inspiration for the flavor.
It's similar.
It's similar in that it's a light citrus, but I wouldn't tell you that it tastes like it. It's in the same category, but like just like any blue raspberry might taste like another blue raspberry, but it's not at all the same.
Yeah, it's like, why try to reinvent the wheel if you know something that already tastes good, right?
Right, and in the back of our minds, it was like, we produce all this. If nobody buys it, like, I'm gonna be stuck drinking it for the next 2 years. So I have to, at the very least, like the flavor, and that was my favorite energy drink. So that's kind of why we chose that.
So you're an energy drink connoisseur of sorts now?
I truly believe that I have one of the widest palettes for energy drinks. Every time I see a new one, I try it. Very, very aware of what that flavor profile and market looks like.
And you said something earlier I wanted to touch on. You're like, but you can't die from it. There is a website called deathbycaffeine.com where it'll tell you if you have 16 Red Bulls, you might have a heart attack, or like whatever the number is,
Yeah. I read these studies that I don't even remember when it was from. It could have been the 80s, 90s, like no idea. The military was testing caffeine intake and different ways of taking it, whether it be orally, injection, snorting it. And they were using amounts like 800 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams, which is it's like a large amount.
Significant.
But you are right. Yeah, if a Red Bull's like 140 milligrams of caffeine, like you drink 10 of those, you're very quickly at like a lot of caffeine.
Yeah. And so
I always tell people,
not to say that they're terrible, but you can overdo your
body.
Yeah, you can overdo anything. You can have too much cookies and like have not a good day.
Yeah, like people ask me about this, and they're like, "Oh, I can't drink coffee. Like, it gives me jitters. Like, can I drink this?" I'm like, "No. Like, you clearly have identified you have a poor relationship with caffeine. If I were you, I would not try other forms of caffeine, because the way your body's processing it is going to be almost the same, if very similar, if not the same."
Yeah, some people are caffeine sensitive. Some people, I think you definitely build up a tolerance. Like that's how people get to. I heard one guy told me he would drink, I think, 600 milligrams of caffeine a day. And I'm like, Why do you need that much
Yeah.
caffeine? Like, you're just an
I've
addict?
definitely been pretty close to that. Yeah. But if you space it out, right? Like I just made myself a coffee that's 200 milligrams of caffeine. You know, if I have one in the morning, if I have one at 2 o'clock, and then like a little bit more at some other time, like it's pretty easy to get to 600.
Yeah. Yeah, it can get
Especially
away
guys
from
that
you.
if you take pre-workout before the gym, that stuff, that shit is just it's so unnecessarily loaded with caffeine that you can really get to some high daily intake amounts like very, very quickly.
And you're usually using the scoop. So you're like, oh, let me make the scoop a little higher today, maybe
Right?
2 scoops.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And that brings up a good point. Is my brother's I think 8-time Ironman triathlon guy, finisher, and probably finishes in the top third percentage. So a pretty fast guy, not exactly a full-time professional. He still has a normal job, but he'll go out in his training runs. He never does pre-workout because he does heart rate based training. So he says, I'm going to go run 10 miles today, but not get my heart rate over, say, 140 beats or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
so he's not going 100%. He's going for endurance, the long game. And so it makes me laugh sometimes when people say, oh, I have to take my pre-workout before I go work out. Well, they're working out in a totally different way. Maybe they're doing like sprints or weightlifting, but it's definitely, they're not concerned about their heart rate because their heart rate is probably skyrocketing with all that
Yeah.
pre-workout.
No, 100%. I mean, before probably from like age like 17 to 23-ish, like lifting and specifically bodybuilding style lifting was like the only thing that really mattered to me. You know, now I'm a lot more cardio focused, but I would take so much caffeine that like I literally probably couldn't have done any other kind of fitness because your heart rate's just through the roof without you actually working that hard.
Yeah. It's like I used to go to this fitness class where they have a heart rate monitor on you, and it shows at the front of the class with
Is that
everybody
Orange
else's
Theory?
heart rate. Yeah, Orange Theory.
Yeah.
And I thought it was great, but it's like you could have a super high heart rate and not be working that hard just from caffeine or like
Right, right.
just
Yeah,
being out of shape. I'm like, this is kind of like not fair. Like the most fit people have the lowest heart rate and will get the least amount of points. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me.
it's definitely a backwards approach because it's not really about, like you're saying, it's not about the value that you see. It's about its difference from your resting or like your normal heart rate, right?
Yeah.
To identify how hard you're working.
Right. So it's a little backwards, but I get what they're trying to do, and I like the concept. It's just you could definitely game the system in the wrong ways.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
But
mean, also like if you're, I'm not really a fitness class kind of guy. I actually just canceled my CrossFit membership like 2 weeks ago. I tried it for 3 months just because it was like the only style of fitness I haven't tried. Um, but I have never really understood the being motivated by like what you see on a screen.
yeah,
It just doesn't really make sense to me personally. But you know, if it gets you in the gym, who cares?
yeah. I mean, I was doing it. I don't have the Orange Theory anymore, but I was doing it for a few months there, and I kind of like the pull of, hey, there's a class of people waiting for me. I might not be friends with all of them, but like
Right.
I can't miss this time I schedule because I'll lose my credit. Is one
Yeah.
one one of the things.
No, I mean that. Yeah, I definitely understand like that sense of accountability that other people who you may or may not even talk to when you're there provide you. That I
Yeah.
definitely can understand.
Yeah, it's like um a group suffering session. Like you
Yeah.
gotta go at your own pace, but there's other people that'll give you some motivation. Or it's like Jeff is still pushing on the treadmill. I can't walk this section. I got to keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or this
Yeah.
young girl, petite girl, is next to me. Is killing me on the rower. I'm like, I got to step it up over here.
No, 100%. I definitely feel that, especially like with, I feel that with running a lot because running, it's for me. I'm not a naturally good runner, so because of that, I have to run so much. I just did um, a half marathon on Friday,
Oh,
like
nice.
not like an organized event. Like I just went out and did it myself.
Yeah.
Um, but it's very easy to like find the excuses in your head of like, oh, I'm just not feeling well, or it's cold. Like, let me slow down. Let me not really push myself too hard. But when you're running with somebody else, you quite literally like, it's not even a mental thing of, oh, I see them working hard. It's, I need to physically keep up with them. Otherwise we're going to distance ourselves and not be together anymore. So I
Yeah.
definitely understand that.
Yeah, for sure. It's motivating, and I've always ran faster and biked faster going with even one other person because it's like that visual thing. You don't want to lose them
Yeah,
or drop them or you get dropped.
yeah. I think it also keeps your mind busy, which is for me the most challenging thing when running. Not just focusing on how much it sucks the entire time.
So tell me a little bit about your fitness program. What are you doing these days?
So, kind of like I said, running is my focus because I'm bad at it,
Yeah.
right? Um, I put like between 30 and 35 miles a week.
Okay.
I've got kind of like 5 set runs I do. I do a long run that's relaxed, usually like low 8 pace. That'll be like between 7 and 12 miles, depending on how I feel. The next day will be a very casual 10 mile. I'm sorry, a very casual 6 mile. That's like I want to be able to talk to somebody, like have just a true casual run.
Hmm.
Then my next one, I'll do again 6 miles, but I'll do slow mile, fast mile, slow mile, fast mile, slow mile, fast mile. Um, then I do a weighted run, a 30-pound vest, and between 4 and 6 miles. And the way I like track that one is I tell myself if I run under 9 minute miles with the vest, I'll stop at 4. But if I go slower than that, I have to do 6.
Okay. A little incentive.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So sometimes, I'm really pushing it where like I'll be at like 9:01 and I have like 3/4 of a mile left. And I'm like, all right, let's just sprint and get this under there so I can just stop. And then my last is a ruck. And that'll be anywhere between 6 and 12 miles. Put 40 pounds on my back, put my army boots on, and just start walking.
It's one thing to do a half marathon with nothing on your back. Is another to put 30, 40 pounds on and do the same thing. It's a way different workout.
It's I try to tell people all the time. I view very little correlation between your natural running ability and your natural rucking ability. Right? Like once you're really good at rucking, running more is going to help you, but that initial performance, it's just a totally different set of muscles. It's much less cardio determined. It's much more posterior chain, like how strong your lower back is, how strong your hamstrings are, your calves. Not to mention you're not in running shoes, right? Like you're in
Right.
boots, right? So your feet take a totally different impact. Um, your shoulders are bearing a lot of the weight. Um, a lot of that comes from experience with knowing how you want the ruck to sit.
Yeah.
uh, I will admit that I probably don't wear my ruck correctly. People like to
Hmm.
wear it as high as possible on the frame. Um, I've never adjusted mine, not one time. The way I put it on the very first time I got it, I was just like, this works. I'm
Yeah.
performing well. Like, I just don't want to change it. But because of that, like I'm like hunched over a lot when I'm rucking. So my lower back will be on fire by the end.
I hear that. For me, it's like my hips. My hips aren't used to bearing so much weight for that long a distance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, you hear that a lot with women in the military, that they really try to let the rucksack sit on their hips rather than on their shoulders.
Hmm. Sure, there's a lot of different trains of thought or methods to the madness with that. But
It's one of those things that I say this. This has always been my approach. Do you know who Rich Piana is?
I feel like I know the name.
He was like he died like maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. I can't believe it's been that long. But he was like massive in the early YouTube fitness community, just an enormous guy, like huge steroid user, but like one of the first guys to be open about it and actually talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, and he would always say that he had massive arms, just enormous arms. And he would say that if you are suffering, or like if you have a weak body part, don't look at the guy who's naturally good at that body part
Hmm.
to determine how you should train. Go look at the guy who sucks and who's working his ass off to build that body part, and you should replicate that style training.
Okay.
Right. So it's kind of like with rucking. Like if you're really good at rucking, I wouldn't, or if you're bad, I wouldn't go talk to people who are naturally really good, right? I would talk to people who have suffered through that progress
Yeah.
and built skills and built that different style of fitness than what they're naturally good at. That's kind of like how I view my relationship with running. It took me a long time to be able to just run 3 miles. you know, so the fact that I could just do an impromptu half marathon on like a random Friday, is like in my head a real accomplishment for me.
Oh, for sure. Did you hear about that? Was it a Chinese man who ran like a 3.5 hour
Yeah,
marathon, smoking
yeah.
cigarettes every minute of the run?
I mean, that's if that screams U.S. military more than anything I have ever seen in my entire life.
That's
That it's one of
amazing.
the greatest things ever.
I don't know if right now that I could do a 3.5 hour marathon without smoking.
It's yeah. I don't know who he is, or I read that he's done this before, so I don't know if like he's just smoked his entire life, or if this is like a bit, if he's just like, nah, screw you guys for thinking marathons are hard. Like I'm gonna do it while smoking, but it's real impressive, that's for sure.
Heck yeah. And it's like it's kind of interesting, I think. This thing that once killed someone from running 26.2 miles and one sitting, we're like, yeah, let's try to do that and not die.
Yeah. Well, so many people forget about that part of the story, right? Is that he dies in the end, right? It's not
Yeah.
like not a,
It's not a happy
it's
ending.
not a happy ending. Yeah, it
No.
sucks.
But also, he probably wasn't training to do marathons all the time. And he's just like a regular dude. If a regular guy goes out there with zero running experience, you might have some issues. But if you train for it, it's a doable thing now that we know how to work up to it.
I would love to see somebody try to run a marathon without any training.
It's like a David Goggins story, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's another level, but yeah, like I would love to see a normal person who's not like a mental master like
Yeah.
David Goggins is, see them attempt it and see them go through the trials of the suffering and everything.
And I love David Goggins. I'm not trying to shit on him at all, but he did it the stupid way. Like
Oh yeah.
you don't go out with zero training and do 100 miles. That's just not how you ramp up your training level.
I think, you know, the military, um, like social media communities is I think has like mixed views of David Goggins, right? Like he's clearly very accomplished, military and non-military, physically and mentally one of the strongest people to ever, you know, ever exist, like quite literally. Um, but that approach, and I think anyone would tell you this, that approach works for maybe one person, and his name is
Yeah.
David Goggins, right? Like it doesn't work for other people.
Right. Yeah, it's not the ideal way to do it. It's for me, if I were to go out and do 100 miles, I would be sore the next day. I would not feel good. I would probably not want to be running for the next couple of weeks, right? After having to recover from that.
Yeah, I mean, like I physically don't know if I could do that, right? Like David Goggins has that switch where he just turns his brain off. Um, I don't. I think there's a lot you can take from that to apply to your own life, but I don't think I could do that
Yeah,
the way he can.
it's nuts. I'm just trying to get my camera to focus. I got a new camera
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on
no,
over
it's all
here.
good. It's all good.
It's a little blurry right now. There we go. It fades in and out of focus. But yeah, man. So I've been doing this podcasting for like 2.5 years now, and finally upgraded to a decent microphone, decent camera. If I can get the focus to stay on point. But it's just I love talking to people, getting their stories, and hopefully getting them a few more eyeballs and a few more sales. So thanks for coming on and talking to me. We still got some time and just recapping.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm a huge consumer of podcasts, especially visual podcasts, which I think sometimes people laugh at me, but a lot of the podcasts I listen to are from comedians who comment on videos. So
Yeah.
it truly improves the experience if you're watching the video with them.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge lip reader, mouth reader, like body language
Yeah.
analyzer, and it's tough during the pandemic because everybody's got their mouth covered up. Like I don't know what you're saying. I can't hear you because I can't see your lips moving.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I still to this day, like if I go somewhere and they ask me to put a mask on, like I will do whatever somebody asks me just to avoid the conflict of it. But it 100% did affect people's ability to communicate.
Oh yeah. And then they're talking about kids are developing at different rates now, or not the same rate, based on not having that social interaction, being stuck inside, and that's all they know now. Um, I think it's going to have bigger
Yeah,
consequences than we thought.
I think I for sure was like the perfect age to be during. So I'm 26, right? Like 24 right before everything happened. I think I was the perfect age where like I don't have kids to worry about, and I
Yeah.
also was never worried about, oh, if I get sick, will there be any health repercussions? So I kind of made it. out of the whole COVID thing, like pretty unscathed, but I for sure hear what you're saying. Like there are a lot of repercussions that I don't think we really know about just yet.
Yeah, I mean, how can you shut down all these businesses? I mean, I, so for like fast food or food companies in general, a lot of them shut down. A lot of restaurants, had to close their doors. But I think at some point, what if it was just kind of oversaturated? What if we had too many restaurants and that was just kind of a recorrecting of what we really need?
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't think I'm smart enough to like know the answers.
Yeah,
But yeah, I definitely hear you. Like it's there are like natural booms and busts with everything. So, maybe this is just one of the causes of one of the busts. Yeah. I don't know.
for me, I'm definitely trying to eat at home and save money and not spend as much money eating out because you could buy a week's worth of food for $20 or something like that, and you go out for one meal with dinner and drinks with a friend, it could be $30 for one person.
Yeah, I am intimately aware of that living in New York.
Oh
And I
yeah,
would say I would love to only spend $30 when I go
right.
out for dinners and drinks.
Yeah,
Yeah, very, very aware of that. And it's right now, again, like, 26, not married, no kids, don't have a mortgage, right? Like I can kind of not only afford like but just like I don't need to save the amount of money that like I would if I had real responsibilities.
sure.
But I could see myself in 10 years having to really reevaluate the way I spend money on food for sure.
Especially starting a business, like it's tough. You need every penny counts, and you just gotta save for that rainy day. You only fail when you run out of money.
Yeah. Yeah. Luckily, there are a lot of people, at least I think, who have money and want to invest. I just haven't, like we talked about, I haven't tapped into that just yet.
Yeah, I'm sure. You mentioned your first batch or so was like 100,000 units. Like that's not cheap. I can't imagine what that costs.
No, not at all. And, a lot of, there's, of course, there's one-time startup costs, right? Like, I talked about the company in Chicago that we used to develop the formula. Like, I'll never have to pay them again, right? Because we have the formula.
Mhm.
There were not necessarily mistakes along the way, but there were inefficient decisions that I made that led to spending more money. Um, do I regret it? Like, not really. I learned a lot. Would I have loved to be done sooner and have saved some money? Of course. But like, let's say this is a huge success in 10 years, or it's a huge failure. And I'm either way, I'll never think about those mistakes ever again.
Yeah, you
So
got to
that's
try and see where it goes.
100%. I think I spent a lot of my college years like thinking I was the kind of person that was willing to take risks, um, but never actually taking risks. And then only since signing up for the National Guard and then trying all this, doing things like, just even an example like the half marathon on Friday. Like I think I still, because of those experiences, now live the life of somebody who's willing to take a risk and just kind of see what happens.
Yeah, and it's risks are easy, but the calculated risks are more harder to find, right?
100%. I mean, this is for sure not my first idea that I have slightly. Yeah, I had a lot of ideas before this that I like slightly entertained, and this was the first one where I was like, all right, like the money kind of makes sense. I believe in the product, I believe in the market. Like, let's actually pursue this one.
Sure. Do you have any numbers you would like to share about maybe how many units you've sold?
Not much. I'm trying to think. Like, we give out a lot to our friends just to try.
Yeah, like
We've probably
promotional.
gone right, exactly. We've probably gone through like 3 to 4 thousand units. Which in terms of sales, like I'm happy with, right? Like every sale still feels really good.
Yeah,
Um, we are definitely we're struggling to find the best way to sell to people, right? Like whenever I talk about this business, I don't like to sugarcoat it, right? Like the reality is that it's challenging and that it hasn't been easy, but for all the reasons I've mentioned, right, not having outside money in that, we can afford to go through those challenges slowly and to figure it out rather than like force it to work. Does that make sense?
yeah, for sure. It gives you a little bit more leeway, a little bit more flexibility with a business model.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, just to give you an example, like one of the things that we tried was going to MetLife Stadium for Jets and Giants tailgates
Yeah.
and walking around with this big sign that's behind me and just selling units. And we like literally walked around for maybe 35 minutes one day and sold like, just about 100 units.
Wow.
But then we got kicked out, right? Because you're not
Yeah.
allowed to do that,
I was wondering
So
about that. Yeah.
yeah, you're definitely not allowed to. And they were nice about it. Like they were just like, hey, you can't be doing this. If you don't stop, we're gonna go to the police. And we're like, okay, like I'm not trying to not trying to cause any problems.
Yeah. Maybe you could go to like well, if you're already in the stadium on their grounds, it's hard. You have to get permission from them from the stadium, and then they want to cut or they want some sort of percentage if they'll allow that. But what about like the other parking zones or parking lots that everybody stops in beforehand? Maybe that's or a street corner. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a lot of things that are like legal, like you're on that border. It's always a tough decision to like, do I personally want to pursue those?
Yeah.
And I never want any kind of conflict with business owners or like law enforcement. It's just not really worth it. So sometimes we make those, like you said, calculated risks just to see what happens. And most of the time we're not doing that though.
Yeah, I hear that. And so, is there any restriction on what people in the forces can carry with them? Is it like you can't have? Um, I'm sure you can have energy drinks, but it's a risk if it explodes. So, is it? Are there any restrictions of what they can carry with them on rucks or operations?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is it depends. It depends on two things, right? Number one, the environment you're operating in, right? If you're in a like what we call schoolhouse, right? This is where you're training to essentially have some kind of qualification. If you're in one of those, it's a lot more restricted. Um, you likely, there are some that don't even allow any consumption of caffeine, right? Um, does that mean people follow it? Maybe not. Does it mean they will be punished if they're caught in uniform consuming caffeine? Like probably. Um, so in that sense, there's a lot of restriction. And then in other like just general training environments, it typically depends on your command's decisions, right? So I don't necessarily know how high up this would go, but if a company commander, who's in charge of like, 120 people said, hey guys, nobody's allowed to bring caffeine on this 4-day field operation, that would be like a legitimate restriction that if somebody was caught, they could be again punished. Like I don't know what that punishment would look like, but it would be like a very real restriction.
Okay, that makes sense. Every operation is probably a little bit different, or every single branch of the military or the armed forces would be different.
100%, yeah. But I'm a big believer, and I think there are a lot of commanders now who are also agreeing with this, is that to an extent, every Marine, soldier, whatever, knows their body and knows what they need to succeed. And if one of those things you need to succeed is caffeine, like you should be allowed to consume it,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of just like nicotine, right? Nicotine is rampant in the military. Is it benefiting anybody objectively? Like, is anybody better using nicotine than not? Probably not. But if your baseline is using it and you remove it, you might perform at a lower level, right? So
Yeah,
in that sense, maybe it's a good idea to bring it.
you don't want to be detoxing right before you go on the battlefield.
Right, exactly, right? So that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, my personal opinion, and I think a lot of people also share this, is that you know your body and you should do whatever you need.
Yeah. And I always hear about different things the military is doing with regards to supplements and like different drugs and like Adderall and like caffeine and all these different stimulants that could keep you awake for days and days, but still being at the top of your game. Um, Unfortunately, those things aren't really available over the counter for most humans, but maybe one day they'll make their way into energy drinks too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have so many very interesting drugs that have been developed, and I think it would be very cool to experiment with like a practical application of those drugs. Maybe you change the dose, maybe you change the method of consumption, but who am I to say what they do? I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
not important enough yet to like, make decisions like that. But Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It would be very cool just to see what could happen.
Right. I mean, some of them, like Adderall here is literally methamphetamine salts. So it's like
Yeah,
it's high level stuff. You don't want to be messing around with taking 600 milligrams equivalent of that kind of stuff.
100%. Yeah, I think I don't know. My relationship with like my opinion of big pharma is very weird. I don't really think big pharma is all that great, um, and I think it's prevented a lot of interesting experimentation. Kind of like I shouldn't even say big pharma, like also the FDA. I think there's a lot of really interesting practical applications of things like steroids, right? Steroids are a huge classification of drugs. Many of them do very different things, but because they're treated as like a type 1 felony or whatever the classification is, there is no route for consumers to experiment with it. But
Yeah, and I think unless you're competing for some sort of championship or like competitive endeavor where if you took it and the next guy didn't, they would be at an advantage. I'm fine with people doing steroids within doctor recommendation on their own for like whether it's their own physical performance or visual or whatever. Like do whatever you want with your body. Just don't be stupid with it and don't kill yourself from taking too much of it.
right, and the thing that I love to compare things to is alcohol, right? Like alcohol is kind of like a poison to your body. In no way does it improve your body's performance,
Oh,
but it's
it's
just
definitely
part
a
of
poison.
right. It's just a part of our culture where it's accepted and it's okay, right? So if you translate that logic to something like steroids or any other kind of drug, if it was just part of our culture already, I think we would say it's fine. You brought up an interesting point about like competition. I would love to see a full steroid Olympics just to see what the human body's capable of, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about like advancement in training, I personally think you already cannot compare records over time, right? Like it's very, very difficult to compare Aaron Judge's 62 home runs this year with Babe Ruth's 60 home runs in like 1920, whatever it was,
Mhm.
right? Like the caliber of talent is just so different that I don't think that the involvement of drugs would like destroy the sanctity of those records. I think the sanctity of those records is already destroyed just from the passage of time and the changing of training and the changing of talent. So, in my opinion, I would just love to see what the human body is capable of.
Yeah, it's like different eras have different ceilings that they can hit. And
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I've always thought about the idea of in the Olympics. I like your idea too. We should do that, but also take somebody a random from the crowd who is not an athlete and put one person in each event
Yeah.
with all the superhuman athletes and like really see the difference of like Usain Bolt versus a random guy down the street with a big gut, you know?
Oh, I would. That would be one of the most entertaining things, um,
Look, he's getting
especially
lapped
for
again, you know?
right, yeah, especially for those long events, like where you just want to even see if the regular guy could even finish it.
Yeah. I think that'd be a really good baseline because they're all amazing and fast, and they might be only a couple seconds, maybe a lap or whatever distance um, away from each other. And it's just you don't realize what the real level is until you put some normal person in there.
I'm sure you see that you guys see this in the racing world and all that. Whatever that Formula One documentary was or show that everyone I never watched,
Yeah,
but like a lot of people watched it.
Drive to Survive, Netflix.
So that grabbed a lot of new fans that I think probably, and myself included, would say that, oh, these guys are just making left turns, right? Obviously, Formula One's not that, but like NASCAR, I think a lot of people probably have a hard time understanding the level of difficulty because they've never done anything like it.
Oh
Or
yeah,
actually, maybe I said that totally wrong. Maybe they think it's not difficult because they have done something so similar to it, but their performance level is so different that maybe they just can't comprehend it.
yeah. I mean, a 12-year-old can drive a car just fine as long as they're mature enough. But when you
Yeah.
get to the racetrack, whether it's cars or motorcycles or Formula One style cars, open wheel, it's such a different animal. There's a lot of counterintuitive things, and it's extremely physical. People say I'm coming from mostly motorcycle racing. I have some car experience, but they're like, "Oh, you're just sitting down, right? You're just like sitting down on the motorcycle." Like, not really. No, you're only sitting
Yeah, yeah,
down
yeah.
for 10 seconds on the straightaway when you're relaxing. Everything else is you're trying to muscle a 400-pound machine around a racetrack at the limits of physics, and there's massive consequences if you get it wrong.
Yeah, I've never even ridden a motorcycle. Like I can't even relate to that. How long is a race? Is it like minutes, hours?
So they have different lengths. A sprint race is typically eight to 10 laps, which might be a minute and a half, depending on the track length and the speed for that track. Could be 10, 15 minutes for a sprint race, but they do feature races that could be 20, 30 laps, or they do endurance races, 2, 4, 6, 8, 12-hour, 24-hour races. Like those are kind of rare. The 24 hours are once or twice
Yeah.
a year type of thing. But yeah, it's exhausting. And then a lot of people won't do just one race a weekend or a day. I would do 6 races on, if it's a double header, 6 races Saturday, 6 races Sunday. And I'm like laying on the ground exhausted because you're in a full leather suit. You're in a
Right.
from head to toe armored up. Only thing that you can see is maybe just your neck. And so it's 100 degrees out. You're sweating before you even throw your leg over the motorcycle, and then you gotta do all this physical action on the bike and everything. And it sounds like I'm complaining, but I love it. It's
No, no.
just a difficult thing to do.
What's the hydration like for that? Like
So
you hydrating before? Can you drink during?
some people, you have the back hump, kind of for aerodynamics. Some people have hydration in there. I think that's pretty rare. That's more like for the top professionals to have that. But they say if you're not peeing every hour, you're not drinking enough. So it's
Right.
always constant hydration, Gatorades and Propels, and other IV, what do you call it? Just electrolyte mixes.
Yeah.
And I would do some caffeine in the morning, but it's really hard. Like imagine you're working out at your peak potential. I can't have a cheeseburger. Like I can't eat a whole lot when I'm doing it. So it's like a protein bar here, a snack bar there, maybe half of it,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I go out for my practice session and then have some strawberries or something, like very low, very light foods. Um, but yeah, just trying
Yeah. I mean,
to,
what you're describing is really more of an endurance event. Like you might only be on the track for like 8-10 minutes, whatever you said, but if there's practice rounds and there's like other preparation and you're in this suit for hours and you're at the track for hours, like it's much more endurance than just like let me drink some water, caffeine, get the heart rate up, and go.
yep. And then a lot of the times, like most racers at our level are not coming with a full pit crew. So that means you're driving to the event the night before. I usually camp at the track, and then you're doing your tires. You're taking your tires off, getting them changed maybe by a tire guy, but putting them back on your motorcycle all yourself. You're doing all the suspension changes yourself between sessions. Putting the
Yeah.
gas in the bike, checking your tire pressures every session, and then maybe like I'm doing a lot of coaching now, so a lot of my time is gone and helping other people and not even in my own pit area, sitting down, drinking water. I'm like over 3 canopies over, like telling this person like, hey, you got
Yeah.
to move
Yeah.
your butt off the seat more before I even get back to my own area. So it's it's different.
Damn. Yeah. It's a whole world I just don't know anything about, but it's like it's really interesting stuff. It sounds like it's a hard entry level hobby,
Yeah,
right? Like
it's
how do you get into it?
so I got into it because I got in trouble for speeding on the street.
Okay.
So they got me at 77 over in a 70 about 12 years ago, and I went straight to jail, and was like, oh, I can't do that
7 miles
anymore.
an hour over. So you
Over,
weren't
yeah.
going 77. Okay,
No, it
gotcha.
was 147
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something. And so
yeah.
that was a bad day. It changed my life, man. Um, I was facing like 90 days in jail. I didn't serve, all that. I just post bail immediately and like went to court
Yeah,
pretty much. But I mean, if that wouldn't have happened, I probably would have been dead from being a hooligan on the street, by now,
that's a really
because
yeah.
it's not smart. So the next year I did a full season of track days, is what it's called. So like practice time, it's not a race. You just go there with your motorcycle, and they have different groups. Every 20 minutes, a different group goes out: novice, intermediate, advanced, based on your skill level. And there's coaches there. I'm one of them now, but back then, just learning and trying to figure out how this whole thing works, and how far you can push it, and the different going to different tracks around the country. And then by the end of that first season of track days, I was already advanced and passing people who are racing. So I'm like, well, why don't I just try racing? I'm already passing this guy.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And I did, and I got some trophies, as you can see. I did really, really well. I got my pro license, I think 7 years ago now. And but yeah, it's so hard. The barrier of entry is ridiculous because you can start out with just a regular street bike that you did nothing to. You just tape up your mirrors, anything glass, take your turn signals off, take your plate off, and you're ready to go. But when you start getting up higher in the rankings, now you need a new bike. You know, need some higher parts. Maybe you need an engine refresh, and it's not like buying a soccer ball. It's like
Right.
thousands of
Yeah.
dollars, and then you're going through. When you get faster, you go through tires really quick. So by the end of what I was doing, it's like at least 3 tires of race weekend. Every 2-3 days, you need 3 tires. So
Right.
that adds up pretty quick. And if you're doing professional stuff, you could use 4 or 5 sets of tires a weekend. So you're spending thousands of dollars just in tires before you even pay for the travel. And like I said, I camp at the track, saving on hotels, and
Right. Yeah.
just do it as cheap as possible. With maybe one person, one other crew, or just me. So it's not glamorous, but it can be done. And yeah, very expensive sport. But then you get into sponsorships and like getting it paid that way. Like I just found out the PGA pays their golfers like $500,000 if you do their series. There's nothing like that exists for motorcycle racing. It's all like pay to
Right.
play. And then if you crash, it starts getting really expensive.
Yeah. Is there insurance, or it's just all out of
Not really.
pocket?
No,
Yeah.
everything. I mean, there is some insurance for some things, but I've never had insurance for a race bike. It doesn't really exist. I mean, you can have like theft coverage and stuff like that on it,
Right.
but not like crash
I mean,
damage.
yeah, if you're an insurance company and you know these guys are going to race, like why would I even cover that?
It's hard, man. But it's where my heart lies. Like I grew up playing soccer and hockey, roller hockey and ice hockey for a long time. And I was never going to be a professional soccer or hockey player. It's
Right.
just never
Yeah.
was in the cards for me. So like, this is something that I'm good enough at to really go far. And now I'm helping coach other people get there. And at some point the student is going to surpass the master. And it's like, I taught that guy,
Right. Yeah.
So it's
No, that's
just,
very cool. It's a very cool progression, and not to like bring the military back into it, but one of the things we always think about is safety, right? Because
yeah.
there's so much that can go wrong in such a short period of time. It's really cool that you kind of took a very dangerous habit of crazy speeding and found like a positive and safe way to let that out.
Yeah, and I see people still, ripping down the street. I'm like, oh, just take it to the track, man. You're gonna learn real quick one day. Either you
Yeah.
crash and run into a curb or a car, or you get in legal trouble, and it's not cheap to do it that way. And you can really ride exactly how you want to on the racetrack with no repercussions, legally, anyways. And you think you're hot shit on the street until you go to the racetrack and realize there's like 100 people who are all faster than you. Like, oh wow,
Right.
I didn't
Yeah.
even know it was possible to go that fast on this motorcycle.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm sure you do feel like hot shit when you're just going by like, people driving normally.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And then you just realize there's a huge world of like learning that you can get better at. And everybody can get better. Some people never want to race and they just want to go fast in a safe environment. And so they might have a different speed that they're looking to get to. And the next guy might want to be like Valentino Rossi, like the top guy, 9 world champions. So everybody has their own goal of where they want to be.
What's like the age group? Like, there's got to be like a max age where your body just can't really take it.
I've seen some pretty old guys out there kicking ass.
Yeah.
And also like for different classes like supermoto. I was out there with a 3-year-old this year, and then on the
That's
same
wild.
track there was somebody who was maybe in his mid 60s. So on the same event. So it's like, yeah, at those particular events, it's really nice passing rules. Like, don't stuff the guy into the corner, don't knock him down, but just like, it'll take you another 3 seconds to get by this guy nicely instead of like rubbing elbows with them. So
yeah, not like risking
yeah,
real lives. Yeah.
being respectful, it's a huge level of danger versus like playing soccer. So there's the
Yeah.
big level of respect that has to happen. And a lot of times, if somebody, say we're in a race event or even just a track day, and someone has a mechanical part that they need, whether it's a handlebar or like whatever that part is, and you have a spare, even if you're racing against them, you're like, you'll lend them the part. Maybe they'll give it back to you at the end of the day or pay for it later. And you'd rather beat them on the racetrack than in the pit lane because they couldn't go out there, you know?
Right.
So it's so different to like if you're playing football and the guy needs a new helmet and you got an extra one, you're like, well, I'm not going to give him that because he could be on the field with me. Well, it's
Right.
totally
Right. Right.
different in the
Yeah.
racing community because we just want to see each other succeed, and it's not about like stifling someone else or it's about we just want to compete.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's very military-esque where like you're a community together, and like sometimes people outside of the community don't really understand it. And you, like you said, you're just trying to see the community succeed. So I definitely can relate and definitely respect that.
And for sure. And now I'm just trying to help promote people in the community, and it's great to hear their stories. And my life has been changing from talking to people. I mean, it's not very often in my daily life that I sit down and talk to somebody for an hour and 10 minutes without touching your phone or like going
Yeah,
out for
yeah,
bathroom breaks or food, eating food, whatever. So, um,
yeah.
yeah, I've become a coach since doing this for 4 organizations, and I'm planning on moving to Vegas actually in maybe 2 months. We'll see what happens, but I got another coaching job for supercars, so it'll be my first time actually making the transition from 2 wheels to 4 wheels, and I can put it on my
Right,
resume in a big
right,
way.
right.
So I'm excited for
Yeah,
that.
that's really cool. That's awesome.
Heck yeah! So I wanted to say you're in New York City, so what's the cost of living out there like?
Like it's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it really sucks. It's everything's just expensive, right? Like rent, everything you need to just basically live is expensive. And then the only reason you live in New York is to leave your apartment, right? Like
Yeah.
it's for all the stuff, all the other stuff that you spend your money on. So
Yeah.
not only is it expensive just to have somewhere to go sleep, but like the time you spend in between sleeping is expensive too.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Now, is the food also expensive? Like eating?
I like legitimately everything is more expensive. Now
Because
it doesn't mean you can't find places that are cheap, but like on average, it's always gonna be more expensive.
I'm really considering and probably will be moving to Vegas soon, and uh, they don't make anything in Vegas other than gambling and entertainment
Right,
shows. So
right.
everything has to be trucked in from states away, and like a carton of eggs, it's like $5. I'm like, man, it's like 5 times as expensive as it is here in Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to be honest with you, I don't have a good reference for like standard household consumables because I kind of just, and this is like the most New York thing of me. I just go online and order it and it gets delivered, and I don't really like look at the prices of, I don't do enough price hunting.
Yeah.
But I mean, beers under $10 are going to be, I shouldn't say hard to find, but like a normal beer would be like $7 or $8, so you can get a cocktail for like maybe the lowest 15, maybe 12.
Yeah.
Um, if you're going out for food, like you're $20 per person, it just adds up. And one of the things I try to explain to people is like, yes, the dollar's more, it's higher, right? You're spending more on these individual items. But like I said, you only live here to go do things, right? Like New
Mhm.
York is not like a beautiful place. Like you don't go for like the outdoorsy stuff, right?
They got that
You're
one park,
here.
right?
Yeah, they're parks, but they're always packed with people, right? So
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's like it's you're here to spend money. So while you're spending more money per thing, you're also seeking out more things. So in total, it just compounds, and you just spend so much money. It
Yeah.
just sucks.
Is
But I
this
still love it. So
is there someone where you'd rather be, or is this home for you?
um every winter I say is gonna be my last winter here, which your winters are probably much worse, but I'm kind of, I really dislike the winters in the Northeast. Um, I think probably like my dream is to buy a house, like a farmhouse or like a mountain house somewhere where there's a lot of land, and then also have like a small apartment here. Um, in terms of specific locations, like I don't really care. I don't want to be middle of nowhere, like
Yeah.
true middle of nowhere.
Like
But
Montana or something.
yeah, like I don't even know. Sometimes I go to like, I'm trying to think of like a good example, but sometimes I'll go places where they think it's like a real big city, and I'm just like, this is another planet for me,
Yeah.
right? So I'm definitely a little jaded in that New York is the standard, and nothing ever is going to compare. But I also wouldn't trade it. So
How many millions of people are in New York now after post pandemic?
I think it's still right around like 8 million,
Oh, wow.
but like it shifts like I forget what the exact number is, but it shifts like 800 to a million, something like that, every single day for people commuting into work,
Yeah.
and then people leaving.
It's
So
amazing.
a lot of people, a lot of people in not a lot of space.
Right. Everybody's like packed in like sardines.
Absolutely. It does, and that doesn't mean there aren't like little hidden gems that haven't been destroyed yet by the amount of people, but it's just so many people.
And that brings me to my next question. Where is your product made? Is it made in the US? Is it overseas?
Yeah, so all of our, right, because we're trying to sell to the military, right? We really want to like align with their values. And one of the things that we definitely think they care about is, made in America and domestic production. So all of our ingredients are sourced from American companies. The actual co-packer who did all the blending and packaging is in Texas. And then we sell from New York, right? So it's like 100% within the United States. The company that produced the film, I think, is also Texas, but I'm not sure if they're Texas. But either way, everything is United States made. So we're definitely proud of that, and it's a nice little like added branding.
Yeah, I feel like Texas is one of the most American states there is.
Yeah, I mean it's I've only been to the airport there, kind of like you with New York, but
Yeah.
definitely it's there's a lot of alignment between their values, I think, and the military in general. So
Yeah. I think I went to LaGuardia.
yeah, that's Queens. It's gotten a lot nicer, kind of like I said, but it's also just an airport. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, all the food in airports is crazy priced. It seems like you're at an amusement park or something.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's I went to Thailand maybe like 4 or 5 months ago, and I think we flew out of there. It may have been JFK, but like we spent like $150 in the airport before we even left the country. So
It's
yeah,
nuts.
yeah.
So that's about an hour 15. Is there anything else on your mind you wanted to talk about today we haven't covered?
No, man, I think I really appreciate your time. I think we talked a lot about the product, kind of how it came to production, the ideas behind it. I really appreciate you and what you're doing.
All right. Yeah, appreciate it. You coming on and humoring me with all my questions. So I'll get this edited and posted in the next little while here. Won't be too long. And I'll be sure to tag you in it and share it as much as possible.
Cool. Yeah, man. I'll do everything I can on my end, and like I said, I really appreciate it. So thanks again.
You're welcome. And well, have a good one. And I'll maybe see you at the racetrack.
Yeah, yeah. I'll see you around.
All
Thanks.
right. Bye.